What's up, all Nerf fans out there in YouTube? I'm the Beheaded Nerfer, and today I'm going to be showing you how to modify a BoomCo Farshot. Okay, so just to start off here, you're going to want to take off the shield, like so. I have modified one of these before, so you can follow along on my expedition of how to modify this type of blaster. So, let's see what size screws these are. Looks like you're going to need a number 1 screwdriver. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit. And then you're also going to want a tray to put your screws in so you don't lose your screws. Okay, so you can start off by taking this out, this screw out right here. Okay, so I took the screw out, and looks like we've got a pin here, so I'm going to try and tap that out with one of my smaller screwdrivers. Okay, so I got the pin out. If you can see on the end there, it just has a little bit of glue on its fake threads sort of things on there. So it was right in here like this, and it was actually kind of hard to get out. It's basically a bunch, you've got to get a lot of leverage on it, and so basically what I did is I took these vice grips and then clamped it like this, clamped the rod like that, and then that gave me something to pound on so the shell wasn't constantly flexing and absorbing my impacts of me pounding this out with a screwdriver and a hammer. But I finally got it out, and so now that can come apart like so. Actually, what we're going to do next, since I'm not entirely sure what the heck I'm going to do here, because it looks like this is glued as well up here, and it's got also another rod in here, and I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to get to that. I might drill a hole in from that side and pound it out. But let's take out all the screws and see what lengths we have here. Short screw, longer screw, short screw, short screw, shorter screw. Okay, so I've taken out all the screws in here and I've kind of flexed the slide back, and I can see there's another one under there, but I just can't get to it quite yet. So I'm going to try and get this slide off next. These screws, there is a little, it's kind of hard to tell, but this screw that goes right in here is a little bit longer than the rest of the body screws that I have unscrewed so far. So now what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to drill a little hole right here and then try and tap that rod out with a screwdriver and a hammer. Okay, so I kind of ad-libbed onto the mod here a little bit, is because it was getting pretty tough to get some of these pieces apart. So I did end up drilling a hole through here and in the back of here, but I couldn't tap the pin out. It was glued in there too well. So I had to take a Dremel bit and just cut off part of this circular piece, well, I guess you could call it a pin well, or this pin cap right here on this side of the shell. Make sure it's on this side. So I had to cut that off, and then that allowed me to get this plastic piece off of its pin. And then there were 2 other spots. There's 2 hidden pins in here that are holding this shell together. There's one, I can pop this off here because I did actually get it apart. You see there's one right there on the slide, and then there's another one right here. This one, I dremeled through the 2 halves of the slide because I could see the pin, and I just cut the pin. And then this one, actually I dremeled through the tactical rail here in an attempt to try and saw off that, but then I ended up prying on it and these 2 ended up coming apart. Anyway, so that was kind of not a necessarily destructive part that I needed to do there. So yours might be glued differently, but mine wasn't glued very hard on that one, so I just pried it apart. So after seeing how hard it is to get this slide off and then to actually put it back on, I'm not going to put it back on. It's because with it like it is, if I just put a pin through this blue piece, I can still prime the blaster perfectly fine, and I can still deprime it if I had a dart in the tube. So now what we're going to be doing is I'm going to take off this screw and we're going to pop the shell open. And that is another small screw right there. Okay, so now I've taken out the screws. I'm going to attempt to pry off these 2 shells apart. and that is exactly what you don't want to do, what I just did there, so I'm going to go find all the pieces and try to put it back in there. Okay, so I rounded up all the pieces again after they flew all over my room, which was kind of embarrassing actually, because I really should know better. I've taken tons of blasters apart before, and you really need to be more gentle when prying off the shell. So the trigger actually is kind of interesting because the post is glued into the other side of the shell. No big deal, I'm not going to worry about taking that out, is because that's pretty simple to put back together. So I'm going to take this off here, which is basically the little clips for the darts when you store them in the handle. I'm also going to take off this tactical rail nub because that tends to fly all over the place. And then this piece right here is the lock that keeps you from firing, and there it exploded again. This lock right here keeps you from firing the dart unless there's a dart in the barrel. So that is going to go. That's going to be garbage right there. This is the catch, and then the catch release all in one. And so that goes, I'm sure you could have seen that, goes in right there, and its pin goes in the hole with it, like that. Okay, so this part can just, this gray part on the plunger tube can just pop off right here. I don't really see anything on here that can really be improved. Let me take a look at the dart here, see how fit. Yeah, I'm actually probably going to, I'm just going to drill this out right here so we can get more air into the barrel, and so the dart may be propelled faster. I'm just going to drill out, a little bit bigger than that, somewhat of a circle right there. So maybe about 1/4 of an inch bigger, a little bit bigger than that, something like that. I'm not really an expert on this, but I'm just going to drill a hole out there. And then another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gray piece off, the spring, and the other gray piece off, because that was another part of the lock system that keeps you from firing the blaster. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to Dremel down this right here, cut that off, and then I will tape that up with some electrical tape or some other tape so the more air will stay in the barrel. One thing that is really cool to note here, actually, there's a seal right here, so when it goes onto the plunger tube, it forms a pretty nice seal, so that's pretty sweet. So I'm liking that so far. So I'm going to just recap. I'm going to cut this part off right here, tape it, and then I'm going to drill this out right there, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have cut off that lock there, and now I have duct taped over it, making sure that the duct tape is pressed down really well. And the next thing I did was I took this piece and I drilled out the post, so I have a nice, clean, straight shot right through there. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I'm just about done with this piece right here, so I'm going to put it back together. Like that. Just leave it in that general position. And then I'm going to take this out with the plunger tube. Okay, I guess I didn't really put it back together. But whatever, take that gray piece off, take the spring off, get to that a little bit later. And then we've got the plunger and the plunger tube right here. So it's definitely got some room for improvement, so I'm going to put some thread seal under the O-ring to try and boost the sealing that we have on this thing. Because it isn't like, it's definitely getting a good push, but I think I can make it just a little bit better. Okay, so I have thread sealed under the O-ring. Did about 1 wrap, maybe 1.5, and it gives a much better seal in there than it did before. So now I'm going to go take a look at this spring here. And it's an okay spring, but I think I can do better, so I'm going to go take a look in my Nerf scrap pile over there to see if I can find a better spring. Okay, so I found another spring. I'm also using the stock spring. As you can probably see, there's the darker gray of the stock spring. But I found the silver spring in my tote. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it feels like the power of a Maverick spring or something close to it. Again, I don't know where it came from, but it's pretty good and it's pretty strong with both of them on there. So, am I worried about this breaking the catch at all, and do I think I need to reinforce it? Well, this is a $10 gun, and I'm not trying to go for like super durability or anything like that, but I really can't see any way of reinforcing this thing. Actually, it's pretty well reinforced as it is, and it is a pretty small catch, and I can't really do anything in the shell or on this thing to make it more reinforced to control this ridiculous spring power here. So I'm not going to do anything to the catch just because I don't think I can. But all I think is left to do now is put it back together and put a rod through this piece right here. Okay, so I've screwed all the screws back in, and again, as part of this mod, I'm taking the slide off. And so I'm going to glue this pin that was located around back here in this hole right here that we took out, or it was this hole. One of the two, can't remember. But anyway, I'm going to take that pin and I'm going to glue it in here, like so, so that I have something to pull back on. And then I will show you it firing. Okay, so I'm going to give you the ranges of the Farshot now. The previous ranges unmodded were 70 feet at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to tilt this thing at 45-degree angle and see how far I can get out of it. I know where like 100 feet is and 120 feet is. I don't have a tape measure set up at the current moment, but that's okay because I know generally the area of distance. So here we go. Okay, so the Farshot is getting about 120 feet. You can see the road out there, beginning of the road is about where it's getting, and that's like 120 feet from where I'm standing. Did this at a 45-degree angle at about shoulder level. Another thing to note is your ranges will vary, is because it depends on which type of spring that you put in here to upgrade it or add it on to the spring power already. That's going to be one of the main variables if you do this mod, is because I didn't know what spring I put in this. But yep, 120 feet, major improvement. The only thing that's holding this thing back from shooting farther is that the dart is just this type of ammo. You know, it's basically a straw. It's really light, and if it was a little bit heavier, I'd probably get about 150. Like if it was like Nerf dart heavy, then I'd probably be getting 150. But since it is like a straw and it's really light, then I'm getting 120 feet. Otherwise, impressed, still accurate, works great. Okay, so as you can see from the ranges, it is definitely getting well over 70 feet at an angle, and it's just firing the darts so sickeningly fast. In fact, I want you to take a minute and just listen to the sound this thing makes as it fires. The sound that this blaster makes is just so deadly sounding and is so satisfying to fire that it actually half feels like you're firing a real gun, because it actually does kick a little bit and makes a really loud sound. This is probably the fastest that you're actually going to want to shoot these darts, is because I'm noticing that they're starting to fishtail pretty bad. It's not affecting the speed or anything that badly, but remember, this is a really, really light dart. It's basically a straw with a rubber tip. So just going over the mods again, what I did is I took the slide off, as you can plainly see there. I took the gray slide off, and then I removed the lock so that you can now dry fire the blaster, even though if you dry fire this thing, you're probably going to destroy it. I then cut off the well that was part of the lock, and then I taped that hole so I get a better seal in the dart tube. I then upgraded the spring so it's about twice the normal strength of the stock spring. I then cut out the dart post that was in there as well, and then to cap it all off, I took the pin and glued it in the back here, so I now have something to pull against so I can prime the blaster. So is it worth modifying this blaster to the extent that I did? Well, yes, I can say it definitely is, but if you ever want to modify this blaster, in any case, I definitely recommend that you're experienced modifier like me, is because otherwise this can get sort of messy. I mean, even if just taking this thing apart, trying to get it apart, I mean, the slide was giving me a big deal of pain. There was 4 spots that were glued in, and I had to cut all the bolts off of them, or the pins. So The slide is salvageable if you really want the slide, but it was just easier to leave it off and stick a pin in the back. And this thing hangs out anyway, so it was really reducing weight and making the blaster smaller so it can fit in a pocket. Well, otherwise, yeah, I can totally recommend modifying this blaster. Remember, to the extent I did. So yeah, that's just about concludes this video. If you would, please click that subscribe button down there. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Give me a thumbs down if you disliked it. Leave a comment below. And if you got any questions, you can send them via the YouTube Messenger or ask them in the comments below, whichever you choose. So, until next time, guys, keep nerfing.